You can't be afraid. You can't be afraid of, oh, we're not doing this because we don't know how. Because if you're afraid of trying something that you don't know how to do, you're not going to get very far. You're going to hit a roadblock really quick, and that's going to be the end of it because
Right.
of how small we are. But is that going to stop us? Absolutely not. We would immediately reach out, get more people in here. We'd start building more bikes. We'd make bigger orders. We would make it happen.
Yep.
No problem.
Welcome to Manufacturing Insiders. Today I have Jason Reddick with me. He is a highly experienced manufacturer of custom motorcycles with Combat Motors. Today we're going to talk about small batch OEM, the process, what it takes to kind of navigate some of the logistical challenges, some of the manufacturing challenges there. And Manufacturing Insiders is really on a mission to connect manufacturing leaders with each other and to share insights. Jason's learned some great lessons over his 18 years at Combat Motors, and they're lessons that really anybody can learn from in the manufacturing space. And the other thing that we're really big on at Manufacturing Insiders is connecting manufacturers with the resources they need to be successful, whether it's cost saving tips, profit generating tips. We worked with a lot of manufacturers. We've interviewed a lot of manufacturers, and we have a lot of knowledge. So if anyone's looking for some information about how to grow their manufacturing facility, let us know and we can help you out. Welcome to Manufacturing Insiders, Jason. Looking forward to our talk today.
Thanks for having me, Nate. I've been looking forward to it.
Awesome, sweet. So you're a little bit of an atypical guest. A lot of our manufacturers tend to be contract manufacturers. And you guys are OEMs, but even more than that, you have your own set of challenges kind of as a small batch OEM. So can you kind of run me through what does it take to design and manufacture a custom motorcycle?
Well, first, we don't use the word custom. We strive to be as close to a large batch OEM as we can.
Yep.
That's what we're pushing for. We've been working for that since the day I walked in the door. It's surprisingly hard. Some of the bigger challenges that we have are with economy of scale. Since we're dealing with small batches, usually in the tune of somewhere between 20 and 100 builds per model, we have a tough time getting some manufacturers to produce what we need. If they'll even touch it at all,
Yep.
a lot of times they have to price themselves out, and we're stuck with looking at hand manufacturing or producing it ourselves or having really small, unreliable, unrepeatable parts made. So that's our most consistent, longest running hurdle constant.
So how many motorcycles are you manufacturing in a batch? A line, I guess you could say. Do you kind of do them by years? How does that work?
No, the year to year, as in calendar year to year, like you typically see with larger manufacturers, doesn't really work for us. One, because we'll keep producing a bike as long as the demand holds out, as long as it's product life cycle keeps going on and we have sales for it, we'll keep selling it. And then we also we've never had the manpower to design a bike that fast, because the amount of work that it takes to, say, for example, build a custom motorcycle, you've only got to do that once. You don't really need to keep track of what you're doing, what parts you're using. You don't have to be too selective about where you're getting parts. Can you ever get them again? Are they going to be repeatable? And can you afford to buy them in bulk? We have to do all those things. And given our small pool for personnel, we can't get a model from concept to going down the road in 365 days. Typically not something that we can do. But to go back to the original question, models have gone as few as 25 builds up to more than 150, probably pushing close to 200.
Wow.
So, and now those will take varying amounts of time will be covered to build those over my time in the company. We've usually averaged about 25 builds per year. Of course, we've gone higher than that. We have dipped lower than that in tough years. 2008 was really skinny. 2009 wasn't much better, as an example.
Yep.
So some models will run for several years, and others maybe a year and a half to 2 years.
Yeah. So yeah, very small batches. So you can see the picture on the screen there.
Yes.
So when I'm looking for, first of all, I mean, these are just absolutely phenomenal looking motorcycles. I mean, just the coolest looking bikes you could possibly find. So when I'm looking at this, what percentage of the parts in this assembly are we talking that you guys are going to have to make custom? And what percentage would you say are components are kind of coming off the shelf, or you can order them from another manufacturer?
We would probably be looking at something in the tune of 80%, I would say. It varies from model to model.
Yep.
It should be about 80%. We have manufactured parts in the past, but we typically do better to leave the manufacturer of parts, especially specialized parts, to those that do it for a living. Example, our brake systems. We have those. We purchase those as a kit. We will typically carry over a kit from one model to another, which
Okay.
shortens development time and also reduces risk. We don't have to take the risk of, oh, is this brake system going to work? Our engines are as much as possible, they're off-shelf parts. It allows the engine builders to do what they do best.
Yep.
We get better results on that. All the billet parts, we design all those. We have those manufactured. That makes up the meat and the potatoes of every machine that we do. All the carbon fiber parts outside of the wheels, we design those and have those manufactured, which is a challenge unto itself.
I'm sure.
Just doing the carbon fiber parts, those are quite challenging. But things like the wiring harnesses, those are all made. We make those specifically for our bike. I design those from scratch, and we send them out to have them reproduced. But I'd say 80% is a good starting point. We've gone higher
That's
than that,
huge.
and we have gone lower. It is huge.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm so impressed with you in particular and how many parts of this process you're involved in. How in the world did you get the knowledge to be able to do all of these different things, designing wire harnesses, designing parts, prototyping? You talked about some of the, the 3D printing that you've been doing to kind of prototype. How did you learn how to do all this?
It's definitely a body of work. It's nothing that I set out to do. Oh, I'm going to do this. Nothing like that. But I started out as a technician in the Air Force. I was a jet engine mechanic there. I worked on engines for F-15s and F-16s. And then once I got out, I was a motorcyclist by hobby.
Yep.
I got out of the military, went back to college to get my bachelor's from UAB. While I was working through college, I worked full time as a motorcycle technician. So that's where I was getting actual hands-on professional. That's when I started in the motorcycle industry as a professional.
Yep.
I did that all the way through college. Once I graduated, I was hired on with what was the original company for Combat Motors. We did a rebrand a few years ago. I got signed on. I got hired on then. I was hired to just be the production manager. The company hit some tough times, and they needed somebody to step in and put a few bikes together.
It's just temporary, right?
Yeah, it was supposed to be temporary. So,
Yeah.
I pulled my toolbox out and started building bikes, and hundreds of builds deep since then. But to be honest, all the things, if I ran across something that I didn't know how to do, I'd be self-taught. Start doing the research, make some phone calls, ask people that know better than me. Trial and error. There's been some errors, let me tell you.
Sure.
But yeah, a lot of it's self-taught. You run into problems and like, okay, I've got a problem here. This isn't working. One, why? All right, there are no instructions, so you can't just say, oh well, this didn't work. Let me pass it off to somebody else. We're in a company where we've been as few as 4 and 5 employees. I go on a tightrope without a net.
Yep.
If something doesn't work, there's no place to hide. There's only one person to blame and only one person to turn to. That's me. So start learning. You can't be afraid. You can't be afraid of, oh, we're not doing this because we don't know how. Because if you're afraid of trying something that you don't know how to do, you're not going to get very far. You're going to hit a roadblock really quick, and that's going to be the end of it. For
Right.
example, I've been learning how to 3D print over the last few months. It's just something we were looking into, trying to get our newest bike off the drawing board, and the elections came around, Tariff showed up. We're like, oh wow, we need to start reconsidering the suppliers that we're looking at. 'Cause the numbers are changing fast.
Right.
So well, I've got to keep the nose on the grindstone. If I could just look at some of these parts in hand, then we can reduce the number of pieces that we need to prototype. Meaning having two made out of billet, which is wildly expensive, especially if you stand a good chance of the part needing some kind of an adjustment, even if it's a rethread or whatever. Well, okay, I'll look into it, and found out that Utah Tech here in town in St. George had a makerspace, so you can rent 3D printers.
Yep.
So okay, and they have a class teach you how to use it.
Yep.
So I went down there, took their 10-minute class for how to use a 3D printer, and tried to make a part. It worked. Came back to the owner of the company and said, "Hey, this worked. Maybe we should consider getting our own printers." So we did the math and we're like, well, okay, if we can make X number of these parts and scratch them off the prototype list, that can justify the cost of the printer. So we went and bought two.
Yeah.
And yesterday I ordered another one. We've got a third one on the way.
Wow. What model are you using?
We're using Bamboo Labs. We have a X1C and X1E and their new H2D on the way.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you're familiar.
Not too much, but I just thought somebody might be interested in knowing. And I'm fascinated by the 3D printing. I think it's amazing, and
Yep.
I would like to get one at some point and kind of mess around with it and see what I can do. I'm not real good with the CAD stuff, so I'd have to.
No, nor am I. Nor am I. When we were going through this design process after we've moved to Utah, our designer lives in Florida. Of course, I'm here. So when we have design/engineering meetings, right, online here, and he says, okay, this is what we're working with. I'm looking at it, we start going back and forth. Well, we change this hardware. How do you want to build that? Does this look the way you want it to look? The designer, well, I'd like to keep looking this way. Can we make it happen? And just out of my own curiosity, I started looking into some CAD software, working with Onshape a little bit. They have some free trial things. So I started messing with Onshape a little, and just teaching myself how to navigate the software a little bit.
Yep.
Has helped me communicate with our designer better. Because he
Sure.
can fly up and down SolidWorks like it's nothing. So once I was able to even just communicate with him in a language that he more understood, because I had messed with the software some, it improved our working relationship there. And once I looked into 3D printing, I had already familiarized myself with a CAD design, so I didn't have to jump that hurdle to start doing the 3D printing. I had already looked into the CAD design at least enough to move parts around, modify things a little bit here and there to make them print better, and move on. So I was right back to that body of work. I simply put a little bit of time into learning something. I don't need to be the master of it. I just need to be familiar enough to get myself into trouble.
Yeah, and to guide, and to kind of relay the information to the person who's doing the design. That
Exactly.
does make sense. Yeah, I mean, boy, I'll tell you, Jason, I think a lot of people would want to poach you. It's hard to find somebody that can take on that almost that entrepreneurial mindset inside of a business and be willing to take on different tasks, be continually learning new things to add value. So I mean, they're lucky to have you there.
Yeah. I feel lucky to be here. I've been here for a long time. I like what I do. It's definitely work. A lot of people misunderstand what we do, and that would be really cool to do that. And I'm like, well, no, you have to understand it is still work. I have days where I come in and I've really got to work.
Yeah.
But I definitely have one of the coolest jobs in the world. I mean, I can't imagine anything that would replace it.
Yeah, I mean, having something that's so unique, these bikes are so unique. Just seeing the finished product and actually maybe seeing somebody out on the street riding one of your bikes
Mhm.
would have to give you a pretty big sense of pride. Even more than if you worked at Harley Davidson or something. They're handing the design down to you. Here's what you're going to make. You make it. You weren't that involved, but your fingerprints are on every part of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. I, I have. I've been around long enough, and I've built enough of them now, so that I built most of them. At this point, I don't think. Yeah, definitely. I've definitely built more of these than anyone ever. The
Yeah,
company's been around since '91, and I'm far above and beyond any build. So most of them that you see, I built it. Um, but see, the thing is, if you, I would have, I think I would have that sense of pride no matter what I was making. No
sure.
matter what I was, no matter what I was building. Because I certainly don't have time to, wax poetic about the ones that are already done and gone and down the road, or on their homeowner, because they're not mine. I'm building a bike for our customer, and ultimately the customer has to be happy with it. It's their machine.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, I guess I do have a bit of pride to it. But I like to think that I would put that to anything,
Sure.
and and then so you have to put that same enthusiasm to 3D printing. I have to make sure the parts that I'm making are good. I had to put that same enthusiasm to learning a bit of CAD so I could work with my designer a little bit better, and I had to put that enthusiasm to learning how to build bikes, or even when we went racing. I had to put the same enthusiasm into figuring out how to make a bike go fast down Bonneville. I mean, that was a whole nother challenge on its own. So it doesn't just one thing to the next, and it builds all together, and you're proud of what you make, not necessarily what the thing is. If
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. You're proud of the work that you do. So who buys your bikes? And why do they buy them?
Typically, as given the price points that we've been selling at, most of the folks that buy from us are quite wealthy, quite well to do. Many of them buy our bikes for the exclusivity as much as anything else. Quite
Right.
a few of them simply just get put on display. I've seen many bikes come back through the shop on trade-in or whatever, and it looks exactly the way I built it
Oh,
years and
wow.
years before. I mean, we have one on the rack here now that I built in probably 2017 or 2018, and judging by the mileage, I'm the only person that's ever ridden the bike. It looks It looks like
Wow.
I finished building it yesterday. It looks like they had it under glass or something. It's completely spotless. So that does collectors buy them. A lot of customers, most of the customers that collect have more than one. I've seen customers that have as many as 9.
Holy
So that's
cow.
yeah, that's I mean, honestly that causes a little stress. I
Yeah.
think 9 of them in one place at one time. Like, oh my god, no, nobody break. I hope everything's going good. Because that's a lot. There's no one else to blame for those 9 things except me. Uh,
Yeah.
so, but yeah, but we do have a few customers that have just one, and we've got some guys that went out and got loans for them, because they wanted one so bad. They had been looking at our bikes for years and years and years, and they always wanted one. Go out and get a loan and buy one. Which is actually
Wow.
something we're trying to get to with our next model. Where we're using a homologated engine. So we're backing off the displacement a little bit, sacrificing a little bit of power to get something that will homologate around the world, which will make it easier for us to have customers get financed for our bikes, which is the first time in company history. So we're really excited about that.
Can you
So
define that word for me?
what's that?
Homologate. Homologate.
Meaning that the engine will pass emissions.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. See, uh, one another hurdle that we've been trying to get over for decades is emissions.
Mm-hmm.
It's something where we've always been able to fall into the exemptions. There are some exemptions, given
Right.
how few we make. That's what we've been having to work into for a long time. And now that we can get a homologated engine from S&S Cycles, we're going to be able to get into more countries around the world, more than we ever have before. And say hopefully it will open up our customer base to people that don't want to just collect it. They want to buy it and go ride the thing around.
Right.
So
What
we're hoping to expand.
curious, like what sacrifice of power do you have to deal with when you have those emissions? I'm not sure if you're using a catalytic converter or what, but what do you sacrifice there?
But we're probably looking to tune where our last engine is about 135 horsepower, so not a huge amount of horsepower, but the torque was almost 150 foot-pounds of torque, which is stump pulling power.
Yeah.
That's big.
Yeah.
So we actually won't be losing very much horsepower, maybe 10 to 12. We'll drop quite a bit of torque. It'll get down to about 120 or so. But to be honest, those huge, powerful engines like that, which we've typically been using, those niche our customer base a little bit. Because a lot of people, you tell them how big the engine is, they're more than 2 liters out of a 2-cylinder. I'm not sure if you're
Wow.
familiar, but that's a massive motorcycle engine. That is mega massive.
Yep.
A lot of people are like, "Oh, that's too much. I can't ride that." So, we are going to be sacrificing some power, but it will again hopefully make it a little bit more palatable to more customers, because the idea is to bring our MSRP down so we can bring our numbers up, our production numbers up, and grow the company. Get more personnel in the door and get more bikes out the door.
Yep. So in terms of your, like comparing your current production to, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, are you seeing growth? Are you kind of, at the same level? What's it look like?
We've stayed pretty flat, actually. Typically, the value of the U.S. dollar overseas has probably the most direct effect on our sales. We've had plenty of years where when the U.S. dollar got real weak, man, it seemed like every bike we were building was going overseas. They were just every one of them was going in a box, had to be shipped, and everywhere, name it, anywhere from Russia to India to China, Saudi,
Wow.
Kuwait, the list, Australia, Canada. The list goes on and on and on and on and on. That usually has the bigger effect, but we're talking plus or minus 5 builds per year. But for us, 5 builds, that's a massive percentage, and then we can really feel that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Wow. So tell me about the challenges that you're experiencing. You mentioned the tariffs before, and with something, it's a topic we've covered in a couple different podcasts. I always like to get someone's perspective on the effects of it. What are you seeing?
The way we bring in parts for our bike, and as I said, we leave specialists to produce things. So
Yep.
what that means is we have huge chunks of our bike that come from overseas. Again, if I go back to the brakes, they come from France. Our wheels come from South Africa. We've got Italian parts. We've got European parts. So if we just draw a line through all the parts that have to come across the border and increase all their increase their price by 20%, 30%, 40%, whatever it may be.
Right.
We're really feeling that pretty hard. And we
Right.
felt pretty quick. We try to do U.S. on everything. If we could, we would. If we could, we would buy every single part from the United States. That's what we would love to do. But we're not going to end up with the best product that way. That's just fact.
Yep.
So that's really our biggest challenge. we've been caught by the tariffs in between the drawing board and reality.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe it's fortunate that we hadn't already started bringing in parts from overseas for this machine. We were able to stop that before they started coming in, and then we're committed to purchase orders and things like that. But it's certainly put a hiccup on us. We're going to get
Sure.
past it. We just have to back up a little bit and find new sources for the parts that we can, and then the bits that we feel like we want to stay with overseas, we have to find a way to make up the I don't like to say losses. I would say ultimately the customer is going to have to take on the price of that. It costs more to build the bike. We have to raise the price of the bike.
Right.
That's
I
that's
don't.
just
I don't know if you were aware of this, and I actually recently became aware of this. I was meeting with our congressman here, and he mentioned we started to talk about the tariffs, and he mentioned a company that was going to be hit particularly hard by it because they were getting a certain product from China to be able to make their product, and he said that they were able to go to the higher levels and get an exemption for them.
Mhm.
So I don't know if you've gone that route, but if you have a group of products that are coming from a specific geographic area overseas, tariffs are going to really hurt you. I think there's something you can do.
Yeah. I would certainly. I will assume that our procurement guys are doing that. Again, that's my reach into the company doesn't really cover that. When I hear it in meetings, and I'm always aware of how much things cost, obviously because of how small we are. That would
Right.
fall under our procurement guys' tasks, and I'm sure they're on it. We're actually looking into grouping as many parts as we can to countries that are more favorable as far as tariffs and importing, and et cetera, et cetera. And we're not we're not married to bringing in from one specific place. We'll get them from wherever as long as the parts are high quality. Because
Right.
ultimately, that's what matters. Are you making the best product? If you're making the best product, you're going to win. Ultimately, it might take a little while, but you're going to win.
Yep.
And so that's what we're looking for. We're just looking for the parts that will give us the win.
Right. Yeah, I just see so much potential in the business there. I think that there's a lot of people out there that would buy one of these bikes if they knew about it. And I think you mentioned before that a lot of your business comes from word of mouth. Have you done anything else that has been successful in marketing these?
Oh! As far as what has the company done?
Yeah.
We Over the years, it's just like everybody else. Our marketing strategies have changed. When I first came in, it was still all about magazines. Of course,
Right.
that didn't last long. It was starting to peter out. You used to be able to go to the bookstore, with paper books and everything, and there were magazine stands, and we would be all over magazines. And then slowly moved away from that. Of course, we do social media now as the big driver. That's where we get most of our stuff. We're still
Yep.
in the DuPont registry and things like that. But the marketing is a tough one, because a lot of people, I think, sometimes don't even really believe that our stuff is real.
Hmm.
I think because people look at it and like, oh my God, this thing is insane.
Yeah.
And but do they say that when they go see a Harley? No, because they've seen them all over the road, so they've
Right.
been desensitized to it a little bit. Um, so we'll use whatever medium that we think we can market, but I'm convinced it's still word of mouth, given how small we are and the niche price that we're still having to hang into. Word of mouth is the biggest one, because everybody that can afford one tells all their friends that they got one, and nobody likes to hear that their buddy has got something cooler than them.
Right.
So,
Right.
I mean, not sure they're just like bicyclists. I see somebody with some super flash wheels on their bicycle, and the first thing I do is, man, I got to get a pair of those two.
Yep.
And a lot of our customers know other customers, and they talk to each other, and and that's still the biggest one. But we'll do shows, not your typical Sturgis, nothing like that. We typically don't yield anything from going to those places like Daytona. It's just an expense for us.
Mm-hmm.
We do better going to places like Carmel. We go to Course d'Elegance, things like that, and we have a better luck with that.
Yeah. So Daytona, you're talking about do they have a bike show there?
What's that? Oh, Daytona Bike Week.
I know they have Bike Week. Yeah. Is
Yeah,
there
yeah,
actually
yeah,
like a
yeah. That's what
conference
I was.
center and a show?
Yeah, no, I was referring to Daytona Bike Week.
Gotcha.
That's just, man, that place is a circus.
No,
But again,
I was there before during Bike Week. Yeah.
yeah, man. I've gotten out of that one. I haven't had to go to that one, which I'm not too upset about.
Right.
Typically, the most common reason I would ever get out of the shop was to go race, to go to Bonneville, which
Yeah.
surprisingly, actually, we drove a few sales racing bikes. That one did pretty good. But it was the same thing. It was social media. A picture got out there of one of the race bikes that we built, and everybody thought the paint job was the coolest thing ever. So now we're starting selling bikes, and everybody wants the race bike paint job.
Huh. Yeah, that
They-
makes that. Yeah, I mean that sounds
yeah,
like a great way. It's kind of organic, you know.
yeah, it is. But that organic part is the hard thing, because like.
How do you manufacture organic?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, when we quite frankly don't have the marketing machine that Harley Davidson does. Because
Right.
they do a fantastic job. I mean, they've got their product dialed. They know what they sell. They know who they're selling to. They know how to reach them. They've been doing it for a long time. So, most importantly, they have momentum. Uh, we haven't ever been able to build that kind of momentum. Again, given a small company and the small amount of personnel, it's kind of tough for me to, it's totally impractical for me to be here helping the designer engineer bikes, doing the build process, prototyping harnesses, checking parts, building bikes, test riding, and figuring out how to market on the internet. It just,
Right.
it's a bit too much.
Right. No, yeah, that makes sense. No, I can totally see this is a purchase somebody's going to research before they do it. They're going to be looking at a lot of bikes. And so one thing I would do if I was you, or tell somebody to do it, is write an article on your website that's titled Alternatives to Harley Davidson Motorcycles. And I think you're going to get a lot of people that are in that research phase, somebody that's looking for something a little bit more exclusive.
Yeah. Oh, you said in the research phase, surprisingly, almost all of, I'd say 99% of our customers purchase our bike sight unseen. They have never even seen one of our bikes. They order it online, and the first time they see one is when theirs shows up on their front door. When
Wow.
we deliver it, we hand deliver it to their front door, or if they're overseas, when the crate shows up. So how do you motivate someone that's researching in the middle of the night, 1 a.m. because they can't sleep?
Yeah.
So they're banging away on their computer and they find the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
And how do you motivate that guy? Because we've been in movies, we've had bikes in a bunch of movies. I mean, the list is longer than I can think of.
Which, yeah, I
And
mean, it
surprisingly,
just,
it doesn't work.
yeah. And featuring
Surprisingly,
some of that stuff on your site too,
yeah.
That would
But
be,
hey, I couldn't tell you a single bike that sold because of a movie. It's kind of wild. It's like I say, it's a tough nut to crack, and like with Harley Davidson, they have momentum. They have momentum. That I think the marketing machine is something that's got to get rolling, and you got to keep it rolling. If anybody knows how to get it rolling, give us a call.
well, I guess here's the thing is, okay, tell me a movie that one of your bikes appeared in.
Transformers.
Okay. So somebody sees the bike in Transformers. They're a motorcycle enthusiast, right? They're like, where did that bike come from?
Hmm?
And what are they going to do? They're going to Google what is the bike that so and so rode in Transformers,
Mhm.
right? So your job would be to have an article on your website that draws in that search query.
Fair enough. That's good. That's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, I guess you gotta play the algorithm.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
Huh.
And that's what we
Okay.
do. That's what we're good at is kind of getting ranked for those terms. Yeah, and there's other things you could do on social media too. I mean, I'd be posting that we did it and tag the movie, hashtags, um, hopefully getting in front of some of those people that are kind of researching. But yeah, there's a lot of things you can do. And I think you have all the tools. I think it's just a matter of using them. So if you were to use all the tools perfectly and you could ramp the sales up by, a couple hundred bikes a year, what is it? What's the viability of that? At your current operation, what are you gonna have to do?
Oh, if those kind of orders rolled in today, the viability is probably close to zero. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
of how small we are. But is that going to stop us? Absolutely not. We would immediately reach out, get more people in here. We'd start building more bikes. We'd make bigger orders. We would make it happen. Like that
Yep.
is no problem. We could scale up what we have here to close to that. We would be busting at the seams, but that's fine. We'll just find a bigger building.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah, and once you could get to that scale too, you could have some of your own CNC machines, laser cutters, whatever you need to make a
yeah,
lot of these parts in house and actually be able to justify the cost of that equipment, right?
right. Yeah, which we have considered. As soon as the tariffs hit, that was one of the first and most obvious questions. Was like, okay, it's time to start doing a make or buy. Do we continue on with the buy, or do we start considering make?
Yep.
We have we have there is capacity in the industrial park that we have here where the building is. We could get a hold of a building pretty snappish if we wanted to. It's like, all right, do we need to start looking into CNC mills to make our own? Um, I think the biggest challenge there is that we are not going to be the only ones making that comparison. So um, used mills, used lathes, those things like that, the price of those things are going to skyrocket. Their availability is going to hit the floor. Nobody's going to want to sell them because everybody's going to be doing the same thing. So
Yep.
that's definitely something. If somebody's thinking about doing that, my suggestion is you better get on it right quick because everybody else is going to have that same idea. Um, you
Yeah.
know, horizontal and vertical integration is something we're more than willing to do. If you're hypothetical, my dream world, hundreds of builds come rolling in instantly, I would be instantly saying, okay, we need to start making some of our own parts because we still honestly wouldn't be able to get into the big manufacturing numbers for some of these companies. Some of them we call them up. Hey, we would like you to make X part. I'm like, well, yeah, sure. We'll do that. How many do you want? I'm like, well, we would like a couple hundred. Like, well, I mean, we probably start at like a couple thousand units.
Right.
No,
Yep.
we're going to make maybe 200 or 300 of this model, and then we're going to have a new one designed and move on to that. So that's
Yeah, you need one of the. I mean, and I work with a lot of these guys, and I know quite a few around here, but out in Utah, not so much. You need one of these guys that it's like him and his kid, him and his wife, and they're pretty much running this thing out of their home. The guy's probably had to, been doing machining for 25, 30 years, so he's good at it, but he has no overhead costs. And so he can pump it. He has no problem pumping out 5 parts for you. I
yeah.
know there's got to be guys out there like that.
we,
Is that
we
something you'd be interested in meeting?
that's those are the kind of people that we work with all the time. It's surprising. You can find them. They're out there. Um,
Yep.
and when you find a good relationship with someone like that, man, you defend it. You take care of them. You're nice to them, and you can get some really cool stuff out of people like that. We
Yep.
we get stuff like that for our clutch manufacturer, for our exhaust manufacturer, even our brake manufacturer out of France. They're not an overly huge company. They're
Yeah.
fairly small, So we are more than happy to deal with people like that because that's who we are.
Yep.
We're a small company like that, and it
Yep.
doesn't. I understand when larger companies have us on the phone and like, well, it's not really what we do. The numbers aren't enough, and I understand. I get it. They're just making a business decision. They're looking at what we want and what they can offer, and it doesn't match. It's
Yep.
it's nothing. It's not a problem. It's nothing against them. And then that opens us up for other small companies like us. And if we can right size to each other, then let's make some magic. Let's make some motorcycles.
Heck yeah. So, is there anything you're looking for right now? Any relationships that if somebody's listening, you might be looking for a fabricator for the exhaust system, or
Uh,
anything you're looking for.
Carbon fiber, carbon fiber, and 3D printed saddle cushions. We one of the
Mm.
printers we got coming in. I'm going to try to prototype a 3D printed cushion.
Okay.
But whether that works, I don't know. I'll find out when the printer gets here, and I start seeing if I can do it. Do a little bit of experimentation because we ran across some companies at a vendor show in Las Vegas a couple years ago, and they had a 3D printed motorcycle cushion, seat cushion.
Yep.
Like, hey, that's pretty cool because we've always gone to one of these small mom and pop places that make saddles. They cut the cushion by hand and they wrap it, which makes fantastic stuff. But for all hand manufactured things, there's variability. The plus or minus grows on each of these things. So every one of them is different. They don't fit quite right. If we can have a 3D printed saddle, then a repeatability will go out the roof. And then with that repeatability, as with all the parts, if we can make all the parts completely repeatable and interchangeable, that means we can lower the minimum skills that are required to be an assembler, right? So we don't have to have someone like me putting bikes together. We want someone that's less skilled than me bolting them together, so then we can ramp up to that dream of hundreds of bikes a year,
Right.
So
when you said carbon fiber, are you looking for someone that can machine it, or are you looking for a supplier of the material?
a maker of our designer comes up with a fender that he wants it shaped as such, mounted as I like. We send them off the step files, and then they produce the fenders, fairings,
Gotcha.
seat cowlings, things like that.
So, what's the process? Do they use vacuum forming, or is that
That would be one that you should talk to a specialist.
yeah.
I think vacuum forming is kind of behind the times now. I think as far as it's like really big, high quality, nice, large volume type things.
Mm-hmm.
We have had plenty of carbon fiber parts vacuum formed. Don't get me wrong. Over the years, lots of them, most of the time, more than likely. But again, we gotta keep getting nicer and nicer, so we can start selling more and more bikes.
Right.
We don't want our bike to look like a custom bike. We want it to look like an OEM bike. So we have to continuously push the quality of all of our parts, everything. Another example was the saddle. It's nice to say, oh yeah, this is a handmade leather saddle, but that's not really OEM. I mean, because the fit and the finish isn't. It's a handmade fit and finish, not OEM fit and finish. They're not all exactly the same. And just an interesting point about a handmade leather saddle. Probably 90% of our customers don't take care of it like you're supposed to. So with a 3D printed one, hopefully we'll be able to go to a material that's more weather resistant, so that our customers, once we start getting the price point down lower and lower and lower, customers that aren't interested in preserving their bike as an art piece, all they want to do is go throw a leg over it and have a good time. So we'll hopefully start meeting their needs.
Interesting. Yeah, I did a podcast with a guy a little while back that they have a pretty cool operation, but they make seats, and I don't know what it's probably a range of materials, but then they will upholster them, but they're custom for handicapped people. People in wheelchairs, like custom handicap seats.
Okay.
But they actually can custom form them to people. I don't know how they measure them or whatnot,
Oh,
but no, I was just kind of thinking, like,
yeah.
it can't be that different, right? Making a
Oh,
motorcycle seat from a
you wouldn't think so. I mean, you're outside the fact that, man, the prosthesis that they make for people are like mega. I'm always impressed when I see, somebody out there with a crazy piece of hardware,
yeah.
machine bits, super precise, carbon fiber shaping, fit perfectly to their body. Oh, that
Well, yeah,
man,
what a value
all the,
add too, right? Like the
all
seat
respect.
cushion for this bike is made
Yeah.
for your ass.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. That would be, we would definitely have to put that on our really high end model, like our
Right.
170, $180,000 model.
Right.
Yeah,
Now I'm going to talk to
that would
him.
have,
I'm curious about this.
huh. Yeah, yeah. Huh.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, man. Well, hey, I think that I don't know. I think you could sell a couple hundred bikes a year, a
I
couple
think we
hundred
can
more.
too. I mean, that's the goal. We're here to push the company forward all the time.
Yeah.
We're trying to get a little bit better every day, and that's the dream. I mean, if we can get to a couple hundred builds a year, man, I don't know if I'll be so busy I don't know what to do with myself, or I'll be so happy that I know exactly what to do with myself. It'll be
Right.
one of the two.
Yeah.
But
Hopefully, when you get to those volumes, you like can really just do what you love doing about the whole thing,
yeah,
and have people in those positions take care of the rest. That's kind of the hope.
that is the dream. That is the dream. So,
Well, hey, I appreciate your time today. I think you're an impressive dude. I mean, just
thank you.
the amount of things that you've learned to be successful in this operation and the passion with which you convey yourself, and then really a fantastic bike. I mean, I think anybody that is passionate about bikes and has the money to buy one of these things would love to have one. It's awesome.
They're definitely something to own. There are a very limited number of people in this world that have ever owned one.
Yep.
You would be in a very exclusive club.
Yeah, which I think is very appealing to a lot of people.
It is.
Well, thanks again for coming on, Jason. All the best to you, and feel free to reach out if you need any help from me.
I will. Please, you do the same.